are solid state and true timber, as well as
It's noticeable to me that when I use a 4K mouse, it just feels more responsive.
you can go as fast as you can, just without trying to go on. Hey guys, welcome back to another mousepad review. Today, we're here to look at the Kanami Nana. I've received this pad quite a while ago, but haven't managed to get around reviewing it until now. So Kanami is another pad brand that popped up recently, with the Nana here being their first release. And also, I would like to thank Saraki from Discord for recommending me to the creators of this pad as a reviewer. So without further ado, let's jump into it. P.S. My review soon. So the quick summary of this pad is that it is a mildly textured control pad with good feedback under skates, but it doesn't work with sleeves. And unfortunately, I also don't particularly enjoy how it feels on my skin either, so this part I would have to say is quite a con. I'd classify this as a medium speed pad, but on the slower end of medium. Build quality is up to current market standards, and the overall pad performance is still quite good. So the Kanami Nana comes flat shipped in a cardboard box. Now I can't really show you guys the whole thing, but you can see Nana on the bottom right here and Kanami up in the top left corner. It features an old style artwork that carries onto the pad itself, and on the back of the pad you can also find all their specs and socials. Now it retails for $45 from the Kanami website, but I believe it was sold out at the time of this video. The base is Chinese Poron, and the pad measures at 490 by 420 by 4mm thick. Now, before I talk about the rest of this pad, I just want to make a comment on the printed artwork. I am not a fan, and this really threw me off when I first got the pad. Now, I don't know about the rest of you out there, but I did actually use this pad in my work office for a bit, and my colleagues started to have questions too.
Holy Jesus. What is that? What the f*** is that?
Needless to say, this style of artwork to begin with just looks like it was from post-World War II, and it really isn't my thing, and even more so with a knife and blood. Right, if this is something you like, then by all means, but I won't have any questions, I won't judge you, but it definitely isn't for me. Now moving into the base. They don't actually specify what Poron is used for the base, but based, haha, get it? Based, haha?
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Based on my experience so far, this has to be Chinese Poron, or at least it feels exactly like so. Now it's a 4mm X soft and performs extremely well despite not being too nice to touch the actual bottom, but that's just the same with any Chinese Poron pad, and I don't really have much more to say here. It's definitely stock standard industry performance nowadays, and it's quite good. Now the stitching runs very slightly below the surface of the pad, which I guess is pretty easy to do with these thicker pads, but nonetheless, that is a good thing. The quality of the stitching itself is also good. Now it's not the most thin stitched edges like the Lethal Gaming Gear Saturn Pro or the Artisan type, but it's also not the thick fat ones that some rubber pads come with. It's just in the middle, it's standard, it doesn't affect performance at all, and that's a good thing. Do note that the stitching here is quite prone to collecting dust and lint. I've definitely noticed little bits and pieces here sticking to it, the grey hairs and things like that. Now texture is the main discussion point about this pad, and I will firstly say, I don't like the texturing of the pad on my skin and my arm. It reminds me of those poorly made polyester fabrics which just stick like no tomorrow on rough hands. If you guys have ever done any manual labor, you'll have rough hands or go to the gym and you'll touch those things and you just know it doesn't feel good. In the case of the Nana here, it doesn't really stick to your hand and it's not as bad as that, but it just gives me that kind of impression and it isn't a nice textured experience. The texturing itself isn't particularly rough or abrasive, and I would consider this only as a lightly textured pad, but I just don't enjoy this feeling, right? It doesn't affect my arm movement by any means, it's just uncomfortable. Now, the feedback under mouse skates, however, whether that was the stock skates of the Maya or the core pads here, it's very good, and I find this to be one of the better textured feedbacks under skates. So this then brings me to talk about arm sleeves, because with an arm sleeve, you can remove that textured feeling on your skin, but the issue then here is that the Nana doesn't work with arm sleeves, and you most definitely are restricted in terms of your arm motion if you were to use a sleeve and try to move on the pad. So I am against using arm sleeves on this pad, but in this case I can't use an arm sleeve to remove the feeling, and I also can't enjoy it with bare skin, so this is the biggest con of the mousepad, and it really puts me off using it or recommending it, given that you can find very similar performance without the same issues, and we'll talk about that later. So moving into speed and control, the pad is actually on the medium side of things. It maintains medium dynamic friction and very slightly lower static friction, meaning the glide itself during big swipes is quite controlled, but micro adjustments remain pretty effortless. So in terms of speed control, this is actually quite good, and it reminds me of the Super Beings Lab Memoria Pro in this case. So speaking of the Super Beings Lab Memoria Pro, I'll talk about two quick comparisons. The first of which will be the Memoria Pro itself, obviously. Now, skipping aside everything except the surface, the Memoria Pro is also very slightly textured, less so than the Nana, yet it feels significantly better on the skin. Both pads don't work with arm sleeves, but I am very happy to use the Memoria Pro without one, but not the Nana. Speed-wise, both are extremely similar, and I honestly think the differences here can be just ignored, it's negligible, but the Memoria Pro feels just ever so slightly faster, and this could honestly be a placebo given that it is very slightly smoother. So the next comparison then is the Lethal Gaming Gear Saturn Pro. Now this is kind of an unfair comparison given how good the Saturn Pro is, but we'll do it anyway. So just like with the Memoria Pro comparison, skipping everything except the surface, the Saturn Pro is significantly smoother and nicer to the touch on skin than both the other pads. And in addition, the Saturn Pro also works wonderfully with arm sleeves. So this is just a major win for the Saturn Pro. Now regarding speed, the Saturn Pro is definitely a bit faster in glide than both the Nana and the Memoria Pro, and I think they all match up against each other in terms of micro adjustments. So personally, I'd take the Saturn Pro over both the Memoria Pro and the Nana by a landslide, but I can definitely see some enjoying the Memoria Pro over the Saturn Pro for even more added control without really sacrificing micro adjusting potential. The Nana, however, I think falls behind both the other pads mentioned here. So then who should buy the Kanami Nana? Well, this part is quite tricky for me, because I genuinely cannot see myself recommending this pad over others in most circumstances. If the pad art is something you're a fan of, then this will be worth considering. And in addition, if the texturing on the skin doesn't bother you, then the performance of the pad itself is actually very good, so I can still recommend it in that case. Now perhaps our skin all responds differently too, and that the texturing of the Nana might actually feel good for some of you out there, but just not for me. And with all that being said, I'd like to thank Kanami for sending this pad out for review. Now it wasn't the most positive feedback I could have given, but I still think this is quite a good first entry into the market, despite some subjective flaws here and there. The product itself is definitely high quality, and I look forward to seeing what other pads they can cook up in the future. Maybe there'll be something that I really like. But until then, see you guys in the next video.